we shall always answer to all your queries, your questions, like we have been doing. So today I want to straight enter into Pino's case. We want to appreciate the principle that arise out of Pino's case. One thing to note, Pino's case is under consideration, and it arises from one of the rules of consideration, that when the consideration comes, when it is at the request of the promisor, if it is the promisor that is requesting you, say, to pay some amount of money out of the match they are demanding you, then the principle there will actually change. So let us today appreciate Pino's case. First, in Pino's case, Pino had given Cole some money in form of a date. Now, about 8 cents. Now, at the request of Pino, Cole had paid 5. Now, Pino, on paying the 5, Pino had told Cole that the 5 would satisfy the whole amount. Now, the issue before court was whether part payment of a debt satisfied the whole amount. And court held clearly, that part payment of a debt cannot satisfy the whole amount. In Pino's case, it was made to be clear that part payment of a debt cannot satisfy the whole amount. Let's take an example. Related to Pino's case. If myself, Walter, I give Said, my friend here, I give him 10 millions, and then Said requests me to pay 5 million. When I pay 5 million, it does not mean that I have satisfied the whole amount. Said is still demanding me the 5 million. So that is the principle which came out of Pino's case, that it was rubber stamped and confirmed that part payment of a debt cannot satisfy the whole amount. However, in the same case, it was said, if it is coming from the promisor by way of changing of the debt, then it would amount to full satisfaction of the debt. However, let us now appreciate the exceptions. But one thing we must confirm in Pino's case is that part payment of a debt does not satisfy the whole amount. Of course, in the court holding, it also held and said, like I said earlier, that since Pino had promised that pay this amount and it will be a satisfaction of the whole debt, then that was taken the way it is. So now, let us look at the exceptions to the general rule, which is part payment of a debt cannot satisfy the whole amount. So we want to appreciate, when does part payment of a debt satisfy the whole amount? That is now our concern and question. When does part payment of the debt satisfy the whole amount? So let us look at the first exception in Pino's case. Number 1, when there is change of date, when we change the date. For example, if the promisor, the person who gave you money, you are supposed to pay his money on the 30th of October. Then he tells you, you'll gather for that money and you pay my money on, let's say, and pay on the 15th. Now, the rule is clear that the moment he changes date to an earlier date, whichever amount you pay has satisfied the whole amount. The question is why? 1, that when the date is changed, remember your mind has been fixed to looking for that money and you pay it on the 30th. Now he has pulled you and put you on the 15th. What does it mean? That you have incurred now a lot. You are going through a lot to get his money. And a lot you are going through is what we call consideration. Some people think that consideration is strictly about money. Consideration is not about money. Consideration can take a form of promise. It can be a service. I can promise to do something. That is also consideration. It's not only about money. So, in this case, where the dates have changed, it is presumed that you have gone through a lot. You have suffered to make sure that you pay a certain amount on the due date which this guy has changed from. So when you pay on 15th, it is said that that payment has satisfied the whole amount. Because whatever you have gone through, let's say for example, you were planning that your salary is coming out on the 29th, you pay him on the 30th. He's asking for the money on the 15th. So the assumption is you have gone to people, maybe you have borrowed somewhere else, maybe you have sold something there. You have gone through a lot. The lot we are talking about is what we want to appreciate as your consideration. You have now given a consideration, and therefore that means that part payment of a debt has now satisfied the whole amount. So as you change debts to when you are somebody is supposed to pay you, and then you bring to a nearer date, just to know that that payment has satisfied the whole amount. Let's look at the second exception, which is change of place. That if you change the place where I'm supposed to give you your money from, then that has satisfied the whole amount which you're demanding me. Like I said earlier, Said is demanding me 10 millions, and I'm supposed to give him the 10 millions from Mukono. Now Said calls me and tells me on the door of giving him the money, bring the money to Masaka. Now I am going to change and move to Masaka. The inconveniences, the change of place that I had already fixed my mind, because I stay in Mukono. He told me he will be in Mukono. Now I have to look for extra money transport. I come to Kampala, then I go to a taxi. I go up to Mpiji, wherever he is. Then I take the money. That time I've spent, that inconvenience is calculated as consideration. Now I have provided consideration. So meaning that amount I have given, if I am taking 6 million to him, then it has satisfied the whole amount. The court is looking at all these inconveniences. And remember, they are coming from the promisor, the person who lent you the money. So, in such a situation, it means that you have provided the consideration, and part payment of a debt will now satisfy the whole amount. Let's look at another exception, that where it is to be paid in any other form other than money. It can be a chattel, it can be a property. Note, even when the property is of a lesser value, it has satisfied the whole amount. Why does it come like that? Now, somebody is demanding you their money, and they have changed the date, or they are telling you, instead of my money, give me this. Or it is also presumed that you are going to sell something that you love simply because you want to meet this guy's date, which was not on program earlier. Now, you may be having your car. You love your car so much, and then they tell you, you pay me that car. You are selling your car, not because you want. Your plans were not to sell the car. Your plans were to look for money from some other place and give him on the date that you had agreed on. So, the fact that you're selling your car, that is enough consideration. Even if it is your phone that you're selling, it is enough consideration. So meaning that where they request this to be paid in any other form and not money, then it has satisfied the whole amount. The assumption is that this phone that I'm going to sell is, I like it, I love my phone. Now that I'm, the mere fact that I'm going through a lot, I'm removing it from myself and selling it to pay you is enough consideration. Finally, let's look at where it has been paid by a third party. When a third party pays, for example, when my father decides to pay, it is one thing that you, the person demanding, has put us on a lot of pressure. You are impatient. Because you are impatient, the third party has now paid for me. You are not at liberty to go back and demand him for the balance. Whatever he has paid has satisfied the whole amount. Because you couldn't wait. You're impatient. That is why my father is saying, no, Gaya Banjanyo, let's pay him off. Now, the fact that my father has paid that money to you, any third party, remember this third party was not part of the contract. The fact that they have paid that money, you cannot go back to them and ask them for the balance. Whatever amount they paid on my behalf has satisfied the whole payment. You are not demanding anyone. So, that is the principle that arises out of Pino's case. We have agreed and said change of date, change of place, where it is to be formed in any other form other than money, and then when the third party makes the payment. But the rule is part payment does not satisfy the whole amount.